but we sold them for a square, and they smash us on fees. So I think that costs $60 or 65, 60.
All right, we'll get underway.
Fees were 69.
I would like to, and thanks for coming along, and thanks for persisting with a moving feast of dates and a moving feast of times. So I'm very heartened that there's people here at 7 o'clock. The message got out, it's great. I would like to introduce Rob Vernon from Indicium Dynamics, who is giving us the presentation tonight. Now, I've known Rob for an awfully long time, actually, Northwest Coast and databases and all sorts of stuff.
15 years.
Well and truly. And there's many in the room who also obviously know Rob from a variety of occupational groups and companies and whatever else. So without further ado, I'll hand over to Rob.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it. Thanks, guys, for the opportunity to come along and have a chat. It is great to be here. I was saying to Murray before, this is actually my first time in the building. I've dodged around outside a few times. Fortunate to know people like Murray and like Tricky and who are part of the club. I had the good fortune to work with them at Tasmania for a number of years, so don't hold that against me. I after everything that's gone down and a few of us leaving the place there, I had a bit of a choice to make in terms of what I wanted to do, and IoT had always been something that I was very passionate about in terms of its applicability and the things that we can do with it. So Indicium Dynamics has been around for about 9 years, Hobart based. Started life, a guy by the name of Mike Ross started it, and he was working at places like Hydro and Ensura around their data and their use of IoT and those sorts of things. So he couldn't get done what he wanted to do at those types of places, and so came out and started his own business. So fundamentally what Mike has built there, it's a software platform, right? But it's all designed around the use of all sorts of different technologies, but where we typically put it into play most of the time is using IoT and IoT style devices to be sending those devices out into the weird and wonderful wild and solving all of the challenges that come along with that. So I'm sure you guys are more than cognizant, more than aware of the types of challenges that the real world presents, as opposed to the soft fingers of software developers like myself. Everything works on a desktop. It's a little bit more different when we go out into the real world. So Indicium as a business, it's very much a solution style business, very project orientated in terms of the types of things that we do, but typically we're always trying to solve these problems. We're always trying to work with our customers to solve for connectivity and making all of those devices talk to each other. We're always trying to get the integration, so we're bringing all this data in, but what are we then doing with it? We're pushing it somewhere else, or we're making clever decisions with it. And then ultimately we're trying to visualize that data and actually make it meaningful for the purposes that we're out there doing it. I'm not going to bore you with 1,000 PowerPoints, but fundamentally, from what we refer to as the Indicium data bus, that's that core piece of the technology. So a data bus, think of it in terms of, there's data coming in, there's data going somewhere else. So, when we're deploying devices out in the field, we're completely agnostic to it. It doesn't matter if it's a camera, it doesn't matter if it's a GPS in a vehicle, a drone, some existing in situ monitoring service, weather stations. We actually don't care. What Mike has built over the last 8 to 9 years is this really modular, clipped together, Lego style way of ingesting data. Typically we're going to run into the same sort of protocols out there. It's actually quite rare for us to find something that we haven't already touched, but excited when it happens, because it just affords us a different way to be thinking about things. In terms of devices, we sort of think about databases and SCADA systems and other sources of data are all the same. It's just data to us. We write a plugin for it, we ingest it. It's a two-way street in terms of how we all make this work together. So that's really cool in terms of what we can do with it. It's also a bit of a trap, right? We're a project-based business. We're solving problems for our customers, but where Mike had got to in the journey was we'd solved a lot of problems once, which is it's cool because we built this really flexible platform. From a business perspective, it's got a few hairs on it. So leaving where I'd been and coming into Indicium, I sort of said to Mike, well, let's start to look for some of this repeated use of what we're doing. We've been doing all these things across a whole different range of industries. Literally every dot point and more is a capability that we're out there doing for our customers. In terms of local customers, this slide's actually probably a little bit out of date, but we're working with local sort of entities, state-owned enterprises, a lot of work in forestry, which I'll circle back to, lots of utilities, and not just in Australia, but we're working with companies like Internet Global out of the US, PowerCo in New Zealand. So PowerCo, think of them like Hydro TAS Network. So that's New Zealand's second largest energy transmission. They've got a big, wild and wonderful IoT ecosystem themselves, but ultimately everything comes back into a SCADA system. We've got a version of the Indicium data bus running in high availability, completely headless, basically being that aggregation point for their diverse IoT network and being that secure pathway into their IoT platform. So that's a pretty big deal, that one. Lots of work in local government, which I'll touch on as well. A few things we've done close to home, so City of Hobart, lots of energy monitoring, the EV chargers in Dunn Place. It's a great example of a third-party system that's somewhat standalone. They needed a way of being able to bring in telemetry off those devices into a centralised platform, so they use us for doing that. PV monitoring around the place, car park monitoring. We've got a real-time understanding of the capacity in all the car parking in real time. There are various other sensors around the place, weather sensors, pedestrian counting. We've got flood monitoring going on in parts of the rivulet. So lots of different things there for Hobart. Park Shire Council up in New South Wales. So this is an interesting one in that Mike went there and we put in a LORAWan network to support a couple of different use cases. The main one there is we built them a complete end user control system for their recycled irrigation. So the whole town runs or has available to it a recycled irrigation scheme. But in essence, we've written a way so that stakeholders within the community can come in and take their allocation of water, and then over IoT, we're doing both the command and control of various pumps and flow systems around the town. So it's not just about pulling in data, but it's also pushing back out and doing that control on the edge too. For parks as well, they've got some dams that are in place as part of their flood mitigation. We're pulling in data from the dam itself. We're combining that with data from the Bureau of Meteorology. We're running some hydrological forecasting models and basically giving them an early warning network of, is their dam, where does it sit in terms of the various risk thresholds that dam's got. So the business wasn't just doing work in Tassie. Forestry has and remains a big one for us, so we're very fortunate to call every forestry company in the state an existing customer. But the work with sustainable timbers has certainly been, a rich vein of R&D activity for them and for us as well. So we've done a few weird and wonderful things for them. So Eagle Eye is our way of putting in cameras above wedge-tailed eagles' nests. So from a wedge-tailed eagle perspective, any active nest, if it's determined to be active, automatically sets up an exclusion zone around that for all sorts of different activities. Now, the existing practice to figure out if an eagle's nest is active or not is to fly a helicopter up next to it and take a look in. It's maybe not the most best way of potentially doing it, but that is the accepted practice. So a little bit less intrusive to have various types of cameras in there doing it. Fuel moisture monitoring is one we're continuing to invest in. So you make out in this camera, down here, it's not the greatest picture, but there's a lot of, and particularly this time of year, a lot of planned and prescribed burning. So as a risk mitigation activity, forestry companies will do burns in order to lower the amount of fuel that's available in the event of a bushfire. So the existing practice for that is, and this is worldwide, you take these 3 kiln-drying bits of oak, you drive 6 hours, you go and plonk them down, you drive home. You come back the next day or next week, out there, pick them up, weigh them, And the difference in weight is a determination of how much moisture is in the surrounding leaf litter. And they use all those to figure out, are the conditions right to burn? And they feed that into a few different things. It's a great way of realising that last Wednesday would have been a great day to burn, not next Wednesday. So we've fundamentally put in a different type of technology here. So there's a bit of dowel type wood here that's kind of got an electric anode running up the middle. And we've turned this into a real-time calculation now of being able to bring all this data back from remote forestry coops in real time. And what we're looking for is you get these sort of diurnal changes, you know, in the day. It dries off during the day, it gets a bit moist at night. But what you're looking for is the trend to an ideal place where an open stick in the middle of the coop is right, and then a coop in the surrounding areas is also of the right value. And that goes into feeding into the forestry company so that they know that, yes, the conditions are right for us to perform the burn today, tomorrow, maybe the next day. So that's something we're significantly investing in as well. We've sort of solved for making it real time. Still doesn't get over the challenges of connectivity. You know, we go and put in the LORAWan infrastructure to support that, or we've got an LTE version, or we've got a satellite version. OpenStick's great. You go and stick this stuff in the middle of a wet forest, challenging. So where we're actually going with that is making, next version of these, making the sticks meshable, so that in essence the stick that's in the dense part of the forest can talk to its nearest neighbour or neighbours, and then ultimately reach a gateway for backhaul. So we're ploughing ahead into that. I was in the States in October last year in California, watching them en masse use these. So there's a big opportunity for us there to be pushing down into that space. So forestry's been a big one for us, and I'll talk a bit on where we're at with fire in a moment. We've done some other cool things, and stuff for UTAS was probably our first foray into computer vision. Basically just taking the feed of an existing CCTV feed for the campus, using some off-the-shelf sort of vehicle counting, AI, machine learning algorithms. We know there's 6 car spots in that frame. We can see 3 cars. We can inform the building management system that there's 3 open spots, so that they can tell new people that coming to the car park that there's car parks that way. So it's that sort of thing that got us started in sort of computer vision. Lots of other weird and wonderful use cases. We work with Tas Irrigation on a lot of telemetry around their irrigation network. We run a flood alert system for the Break a Day Council on the East Coast. Devonport City's been great. We've done lots of smart cities things, everything from putting sensors into bins to measure the percentage of how full a bin is. Once it reaches a threshold, we do an integration against their ERP system that issues a work order so that old mate in the truck knows to go and empty the bin. So lots of different sort of examples like that for Devonport City. Sports field irrigation is one we did for them last year. So they came to us and said, look, we're spending an absolute shitload of money on water to irrigate our sporting fields. We think we could be doing this a bit better ways. So we just added a few extra gateways in and around the city. We've put in soil moisture probes in and under some of the sporting fields, and then we've done a retrofit against their existing Hunter irrigation system, so that in essence, if we know, and we ingest data from the Bureau of Meteorology, so in essence, if we know that the state of the sport field in terms of its soil moisture at various depths, we know that it's going to rain tomorrow, yet the grounds person is pretty keen that the automated irrigation system goes regardless. In essence, we just deny water to that system. The Hunter irrigation system still thinks it's going, but in essence, we've denied water to that system based on the fact we know it's going to rain 10 mils tomorrow. So things like that. SES, we do some statewide flood modelling. Body Shop was an easy one. So Body Shop, the brand where you go buy the nice creams. They had around their ESG reporting types of things. They've got a different way. Well, they've got their way of thinking about how they run their business. But it was an interesting exercise to run through in that they go and refresh each of their shops, not just in this country but elsewhere as well. In terms of they go fit a shop out or they go replace the lights. They know they want to, but they don't know what that actual impact is. So they were interested in monitoring what's their state of play today? How much water is the shop consuming? How much power is the shop consuming? If we go and spend $100,000 and put in all new LED lighting, can we measure the impact, not just in terms of the financial implication for that, but is it better? Are we a more sustainable business because we're using less energy? The answer was yes. Sullivan's Cove, barrel store monitoring, we're doing some things around some particulate gases. Power Co, I mentioned. Tas Water. So Tas Water, we all pay our bill. Mine's a bit overdue. But one of the main ways that Tas Water as a business makes money is through their trade waste. So the commercial side of dealing with waste from customers, like Cadbury's and Bogues and those sorts of places. There's a whole 50 years worth of stuff out there in terms of how stuff gets measured and metered, and just even an understanding of content. It's just not there. So we are, in essence, retrofitting a whole bunch of technologies into the outlets so that Taswater and the customer have an understanding of, in essence, what's coming their way. Taswater's had plenty of examples where customer has flushed God knows what, and it totally kills their downstream processing plants. So it's just having a bit better insight into that. Those of you that were here a bit earlier would have seen me showing some photos of Lord Howe. So we were asked by Office of Chief Scientist of New South Wales to figure out if we could go to Lord Howe Island and figure out if LORAWan was an appropriate technology to use for a particular use case. Now, we got the phone call because they didn't think that anyone else could do it, which is a nice feather in the cap. So the guys were over in Lord Howe last week. I will throw some photos back up, but in essence, what they were trying to do was determine if we put some gateways on the island, where could they see? So this isn't the greatest visualization, but there's a jetty down here, of which they'd popped a LORAWan gateway. There's another site here called Intermediate Hill. And Harry Theotakis, if any of you guys know him, he's in orange, and Mike is in blue. So if you're not familiar with Lord Howe, it looks a lot like this. And that is quite a significant elevation rise. It's about 800 metres from there to there. So the reason that we're there is that elevation causes the prevailing winds to, in essence, create their own cloud formation. And there are plants and species up on top of that mountain that don't exist anywhere else in the world. So their concern is, as climate change continues to progress, that cloud formation is going to change, and that those plants and species are going to ultimately not be there any longer. So in the first instance, we've gone there to figure out if LORAWan was an appropriate technology to then enable us putting in a whole bunch of soil and moisture and precipitation sensors up there to begin measuring what this change actually is. Good news is, yes, at a first pass it will. So just with the two gateways, that's sort of what the coverage looked like. The area of interest is up here, right? And just the way we've got this visualised, the larger the circle, the better the RSSI signal. So I haven't got the data on this visualisation, but Mike also took with him a LoRa gateway, and we sat it there, just had it on a battery that he lugged up with him, and then the guys that he was walking with went further up. We've just got to download that data back off that gateway because we didn't have it backhauled at the time, but that will give us a sense of whether or not it makes sense to put in a gateway in that location that might help get into some of this sort of area. So
it's just really the top of that they're trying to get.
Yeah, and all through this sort of saddle area in here. So I don't think I've got any photos that are going to be too meaningful up there. But yeah, that's a picture of one of the LoRa gateways we took with us at that intermediate hill. In essence, yeah, Mike was walking up that thing in the backdrop there. So they were there last week. I'm sure they busted their guts out for a couple of days, and then they sat back and had a couple of days on the beach. They told me it was awful. It looks pretty miserable, to be perfectly fair. So that's the type of stuff we do. And
is that a volcano? Just near the peak.
I don't actually know the geology.
Move the thing away a bit. Yeah, there. See there? Down, there.
There? No idea.
Hold there.
No idea. Maybe.
It's a plate boundary, Greg.
So,
It's a plate boundary. Pushed up.
So that's sort of the type of stuff we get up to. In respect to what do we do here at home? So as I've mentioned, we use LORAWan quite a bit. And if I scroll back home, so this is the state of our LORAWan network, and it's a combination of customer and our own that we ultimately have ultimate management over. In total, it's in excess of 40 gateways that we've got dotted around the state. These are the permanent ones. I don't know what that land coverage is, so that would make it one of the largest networks in the state for sure. In addition to that, we have a bunch of, in essence, mobile or temporary gateways that STT staff in particular take with them to light up devices as they go into other parts of the state, most predominantly up in the northwest. So it's not a perfect technology. It's got a few hairs on it. We use a LoRa network server called Laureate to bring all that data back to and then ultimately pump onto our platform, our environment. We are really happy with that. Again, it's not the most enterprisey thing. It's certainly not the worst thing that's out there. It sits somewhere in the middle of it. It's great for us.
The area you cover is the orange.
So that's coverage maps. That's it's all.
Oh, I see. Yellow is also coverage.
Yeah. So there's
Different.
a hodgepodge of different overlapping maps here.
and it's all the one frequency?
Yeah.
915?
915, yep. We can use 923. We got started with 915. We continue to push forward with that here.
What are the things out to sea?
That's just
Great coverage.
great coverage.
No hills in the way.
That's right.
Spirit, you've got plenty of signal.
That's right. So our distance record is something like 120 kilometres.
Wow.
Using LORAWan. We don't trust it for that, right? And we're never thinking that that's what we're going to get. I mean, I'd be happy with 4Ks some days, depending on where we are. But I can't. It was something like we had some sensors down here and we picked it up off Mount Arthur. The weather was right. The stars are in alignment. We were standing.
So you then feed it back into what, the fibre network or something?
Yeah, so we backhaul. We use a range of different technologies to backhaul. Some of it's LTE, some of it's fixed wireless, some of it's Starlink. So, typically where we're going, and most of those spots in red are fire towers, fire lookout towers, which I'll talk about in a bit. Agnostic. Right tool for the right job at the right time. A lot of places we're going, we're putting in solar and batteries to support the infrastructure, so it's just another part of the decision-making process. Any questions before I jump forward to what we're doing with fire? Silence is a good sign. So, as I mentioned, Indicium does a lot of things. And my job at Indicium is to grow the business, and my version of doing that is to productise some specific capabilities. That's us, that's the team, there's only 7 of us. That photo is just across the car park, just on that track, fortunately, funnily enough. And that seems to be what I wear every day. What we're trying to do with this thing we call Fire Foresight is productise, draw a box around a specific set of capabilities and go to market with that. So, in essence, the work that we've been doing in Forestry afforded us the opportunity to start putting out cameras, and then that afforded us the opportunity to start putting AI over the top of that vision to be on the lookout for bushfire. So, in essence, we've got cameras, a couple of different types, but typically the one we favour the most, it's a single camera. It's a PTZ, it can do 360 degrees, and we have it on patrol. So in essence, it's permanently doing that. Taking a photo. We're then processing those photos looking for smoke. About 15 to 20 Ks, we're really confident. And there's all sorts of other weather and things look like clouds and things look like dust. But 15, 20 k's really confident. 20 to 30 k's, pretty confident. Beyond that, we get detections all the time, but there's a thing about just, is that even interesting? You know, once we start detecting a fire that's, you know, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70 k's away, it's cool, it's interesting, certainly interesting in remote environments, but for the smoke column to get up so big that we're starting to see it at 40 kilometres, means it's probably already a pretty big fire. So definitely interesting in a remote and regional context.
You see it only in daytime, do you?
We see them at night too, I've got a few examples. So fundamentally, I guess what I'm focusing on here is talking about computer vision, but we also stitch in a whole bunch of stuff around weather and, you know, the moisture monitoring that we do gives us an understanding of the environment. You know, how dry is it out there? Doing some stuff with satellites and definitely doing some stuff with drones. So from a fire perspective, this is sort of the game. This is time over the bottom. There are sensors, and we've got our own, and we're working with partners around the world on the use of sensors to really get, you know, that really early, super early. In essence, we're smelling for smoke. Cameras are great, but you need smoke to see them. Yes, you can use thermal, but you got distance limitations. Satellites are great because you can see everything, subject to there being no clouds and subject to there being a satellite over your head at the right time. So, in terms of the temporal nature of fire, it sort of looks like that. We're here, and our job is to get as close to there. But again, satellites are a key, sensors are a key part of that. Where do we go? This is Tower Hill in the middle of the state, and that is a fire lookout tower. So existing practice for 100 years has been get to tall places and send people up there with binoculars to be on the lookout. In essence, we're doing the same thing, but we're doing it with cameras and we're doing it with AI. So that's Tower Hill, sort of in the northeast of the state. Amazing spot. Bitch to walk up, bitch to lug batteries and solar panels up, but I'm sure you guys are across there. This is an example. So this is Mount Horror up in the northeast. You got Mount Cameron up here. Yeah. So this is sort of how it works, right?
Oh wow.
The AI picks up and tells us. So this detection was when this would be 12, 14 months ago. But this was when it was sort of like the aha moment for me, because the tower was manned on this day. So the person was there doing their job, the camera was there doing its job, and we picked this up and called it in a couple of minutes before the person who was there to do the job did it. Wow. So that's cool. That for me was right. Okay, right, we need to actually go now. We're not there to put people out of a job or anything like that, but the fact that we can do it 24/7, 365 days of the year is interesting.
Having been a fire tower watcher for the fire service,
Yep.
It takes several minutes to do a scan of the horizon.
100%. Yeah,
Because
absolutely.
you're looking at everything 2k away to 40 or 50k away.
Yep.
And you've got to clear that area before you move to the next lot, So the time you get round to the one that's over your shoulder, it's too late.
Absolutely.
Well, the camera pans as well. It doesn't go quick. It goes.
So we got this going about, on average, about every 2 minutes. Go and do a loop. It takes about 30 seconds. That's because we're processing everything in the cloud. The Indicium database is doing the commands of the camera, doing the processing. We have tested this. We've got this. Our next generation of the cameras will do it all on the camera or all on the edge. We can whip around about 10 seconds.
I was watching it and it seemed to be changing back and forth. It didn't seem to be going.
It could be that human operators are in there having a
We're
look around.
mucking about. Yeah.
For sure. So in terms of Tasmania today, worked through with sustainable timberers predominantly. We've gone up the eastern side of the state. It's drier. It's where more of the production forests are. It's just where we've started. So all up the east coast. This one at Brady's was interesting. It was on our list to do, but we work with Goldwind, who run the Cattle Hill Wind Farm in there just above Brady's. So Tarraleah sort of area. Goldwind Wind Farm Company, lots of money. Fire in D and Brady's a year ago. they were sort of bemused by the response of all of the authorities and how long everything took. They just picked up their community fund and went, here, have a camera. So interesting model. We'd been thinking this is just for forestry. Lots of other industries are obviously land asset owners and land managers, don't have any fire responsibility themselves, but sort of want to play a role. So that's an interesting model taken forward. In terms of Tasmania, there's a bunch of this going on all over the state and not just by us. But this is out of date now. We've actually got plans to take the existing network of about 10 through to about 30 in the next instance, and then we'll fill in gaps from there. So in terms of benefits around that, situational awareness, you don't need to go up a mountain to describe to you over the phone or over the walkie-talkie what he's seeing. You can get there in high definition video. The ability of that data to influence emergency planning and evacuation decisions, real-time investigation activities, being able to get that data into the hands of people who are actually on the ground and work with them. So lots of benefits come out of it. A couple of example detections. This is the fire at Snug from Duty's lookout at Jeeveston. So looking back, it's just that was early on. It got up a lot bigger than that. This is a funny one. So this is Brady's looking at the fire at Snug. So that's about 120 kilometres. So what we're providing a 24/7 service. So we look after the cameras, we get all of the alerts from the AI, and then we are running a triage process of that. We're looking at, is it a planned burn? Are there other sources of fire that this might be? Or is this a legitimate concern or threat? This one was interesting. It was dark, the camera hadn't been there for long, and I was on, and I wasn't actually overly familiar with just trying to pick the features at night. So I'm looking at that, and I'm on the phone, because we escalate through to 000, and I'm describing this, and I'm going, look, I think it's just out the back of Ooze. And so I've sent a bunch of fireys on a wild goose chase at 4 a.m. in the morning, and that's another 100 kilometres further south. So we all had a good laugh about that one.
Did the fireys have
Except the
They're they're around there all the time. We've sent them on some really good hunts as well, but that's an interesting example. But 120 Ks. Now, that's not overly interesting when it's Hobart. Right? Human beings are the best smoke detectors out there, and 000 being the filter on that. But if that was actually pointed at, and I've got some examples of the fire on the west coast where there are no people, then that is ultimately interesting. Where am I going with this?
So Rob, that was visible light.
Visible light. I mean the cameras are operating. They're picking up. But your eyes would see it. They wouldn't quite see it that way.
Yeah. Okay.
Why I get so passionate about this and why it's really interesting is there's a global competition out there called the Xprize Wildfire Challenge. So Xprize is kind of like this philanthropy sort of. They set super ambitious targets. I think Elon Musk and SpaceX were a beneficiary of one of the first Xprize type conversations. So the current version of this competition is detect a fire from space in under 10 minutes and then autonomously go and put it out. So we're in that competition. We formed up a coalition of some other businesses from around the world, and we are now the only Southern Hemisphere team left in that competition. It's gone through the semi-final stage. There is a video that I'll probably circulate after this that shows us up in Sheffield the other week doing what we do, which is see a fire, the AI picks it up, that informs our platform, and then it tells our autonomous drone platform to go and fly there and take a closer look. So we've got that today. We're already working on the next bit, which is actually go and put it out. So, funnily enough, the drone bit's easy. Telling a drone where to fly and be careful and be mindful of all this stuff is super interesting. Carrying 500 kilograms to a ton of water, kind of hard. So we're taking a look at what our role is in that and where we go. There are some people out there doing some pretty funky stuff. There's a couple of teams that are looking to try and put out fire with sound. So use sound as a percussive force to try and drive it out. We're not trying to put out bushfires here. We're trying to put out a fire less than the size of this room. Get to it early. Get on top of it as quick as you can. there's other guys out there. I haven't met them yet, but they're trying to put out fire with lasers. We're not sure how. We assume they're going to try and burn a perimeter around it or do something like that. But in essence, Fire Foresight is everything on this page. So today, we're doing the computer vision stuff. We're bringing in the data from various different types of sensors on the ground. We're bringing in both real weather and forecast weather. We're doing a bit with the drones in terms of investigation, and we're working with companies who are launching the next generation of low Earth orbit satellites. So, challenge with satellites is getting through the cloud. Challenge with satellites is having enough of them so that you actually have a revisitation rate that informs you and tells you something you don't already know. So, our use of that, we use the satellite data that's available to us at the moment, but it forms just another patchwork of the data that's available to us. We've had one example where we had a triangulation from 3 cameras, and then the satellite made a 4th, so we had a quadruple sort of detection, which was kind of cool. So I'll circulate this deck. There's a really cool video, and anyone who's ever seen me on LinkedIn knows I'm a bit of a whore on LinkedIn, so you can see me up on there. Technical roadmap, autonomous drone orchestration was sort of there. Having better tools to figure out where we put our data, triangulation detections in place, doing better detections at night. So the way that AI works is you just take a bunch of source material, do the number crunching on it, and a model comes out that helps you detect. So the vast weight of material for that exists today is of daytime detections. So there's less data available about nighttime detection, so therefore the models aren't as great. So we've got plenty. We take our data, we annotate it, we just make our model better continuously, so that continues to get better. Autonomous location pinpointing. So I might just jump to our platform. Here's an example from earlier in the day. So this is Mount Horror. That's a planned burn. The AI's done its thing, it's picked it out. What we actually want to do is use a concept called raycasting. Is, well, why do I have to come here on a map, and this is how we do it. We bring in all our data that's available to us, and earlier in the day there was a little triangle there that said that there was a registered burn there, so we knew that. Oh, there it is, it's still there. Okay, so we know that that's a registered burn, we knew that fire was meant to be there, but we then go and drop a pin on the map. I don't want to do that bit. I want to use all of the maths and all of our, we know about the aperture size and we know the bearing. We've got digital elevation models. Let's just drop a pin on the map automatically. Cuts out a couple of minutes in the whole process. So we're working on that. What else have I got there? Hyperlocal lightning detection. I'm just mindful of the time, guys, because I do have to run. But this was a lightning event that occurred up in Mount Arthur, or up in the northwest. This is, and we had this in real time, all cloud to ground lightning. So everywhere that's in blue was within about 500 metres of lightning strike to hit the ground. Number 18 here was interesting. So what we do is we change the behaviour of the cameras to focus more on where we've got the lightning, or any third-party source of data, but lightning in this instance. And so our cameras spent a bit more time focusing, and the storm front came through about either here, and then a couple of minutes later, we're picking up fire. And so we've escalated that through, and I'll just play it up on the big screen. Wow. So this is just a time lapse of that event. So we were on the phone pretty early. We informed our forestry customers about that one. Ultimately, the decision was made because we knew about the weather, that it'll be all right, it's night time, the wind's not getting up tonight, we'll send some boys out in the morning. So the good thing is they could watch that all night. Had the conditions changed, they could do something different about it. So it's interesting, you can see a few sort of headlights and a few other torches up there. So people were going to have a look, but ultimately, and it cuts out here, but the cloud came through. But ultimately, people knew that it was all right. They knew that they didn't have to send a bunch of guys up there. They could wait for them to finish their coffee in the morning and then go up and put it out. So it's that sort of stuff that is sort of a bit game-changing, a bit new.
That's great resource management.
Yeah. So our game is, we're interested in protecting the place we call home, but from a business perspective, the world is our oyster. we've got active opportunity. I can't talk about it, I just signed off one of the biggest customers in the world in Western Australia. I'm in California, I'm in Los Angeles at the Mayor of LA's place on the 8th of May talking about what we're doing. And we're in with a couple of customers in Los Angeles after their fires that they had in January. So, pretty cool. I can't move quick enough. And apologies, I do have to run to go to another thing because I'm presenting to a bunch of forestry people in WA tonight. So, happy to take a couple of questions for a few minutes though. Go.
Yeah, how did Indicium get its name?
I think it's Latin for information. You'd have to ask mine. But I think that's the.
Well, you want to learn that.
Yeah, no, I'm playing dumb. It is that.
You said you were doing detection in the cloud. Where does the balance come between having to upload full image data sets and process them versus doing it on site and only needing the small, yes, we got a fire type trigger? Especially when you've got a LORAWan back on.
Well, the cameras aren't using LORAWan. They're using anything better. I mean, typically when we're putting cameras in, we're giving ourselves at least a 10 meg budget. Cameras don't. It's only when we jump the video that we're on that. Yeah, look, it's an active development for us. It's going to happen. It's where we're going with it. Everything's at the edge. It would mean that we can do more efficient things in terms of only consuming a link when we ultimately need to. If the devices, not just cameras, can be out there doing the clever things, then we only really need to hit the video button when we need to.
But you've got GPU power budgets then to worry about. Yeah.
100%, yep, 100%.
Something that might be worth you being aware of, we're doing experiments from Georgetown to Hobart reflecting near infrared off clouds. I'm running 180 watts of light in Georgetown.
Okay.
So if you ever see something that looks like a bushfire, it might be us.
So I like getting on there at night and getting the cameras to look at each other, and they've got IR lights on them, and I sort of let myself know that I can see myself.
Well, probably an obvious question, but how does it determine, or what sort of algorithms do you use to determine if it's at the fire, or if it's cloud, or if it's mist, or what? Because sounds very similar.
Yeah, and Tassie's a real challenge. So, I mean, ultimately it's more source material goes into retraining. So as we get a detection, we get false positive come in, we classify them as to why they aren't a fire. We're doing some other things around classifying wildfire as a fire as well. Ultimately, where our position on this is, we will probably end up we've got some kind of like global models. We will curate models to the specific site that they're on, and at a specific time of day.
One more question: roughly how many false positives are you getting each? Or do you get many? Is probably better.
We do at the minute, but it's for a deliberate purpose. So I can't go. I mean, we've got them tuned right up at the minute because we're not expecting anything.
Yeah.
But I can't really give you an answer on that because we've deliberately made it noisy so that we can do the annotations around improving the models. So,
cool.
yeah, look, it's not bulletproof. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, no.
It's not nowhere close to bulletproof, but
it'll get better as time goes on.
100%. So,
Thank you.
yeah, cool.
Are you aware of Foresight?
Foresight, yeah, lots of different
Launched last month by Muon Space.
Yep, absolutely. I'd love.
Funded by Google.
Funded by Google. They need more satellites up there.
They've got one.
They've got one.
They want to have 50 up in 5 years.
Yep. So we're working with Muon. We're working with Auratech. We'll work with the next one that comes along because ultimately we're trying to create a virtual constellation. We'll just buy the data from the various providers and stitch together the coverage where we need the coverage, when we need the coverage, that sort of thing. So it's coming. It's one of those things. It's with the sensors as well, because if a sensor goes bing, I smell smoke, or if a satellite goes, I think there's a fire there, is anyone going to truck roll to do anything about that? Versus letting a human see it with their eyes. I think that's why we like the cameras, because we're doing all of those things. But I can tell you now, no one's getting out of bed to go and chase a smoke detector in the middle of the bush. Not happening. If you've got a couple of sensors that are close together that all start going off, sure, maybe. But people want to see this stuff. And it's like 000. It's not you know, your smoke detector at home isn't calling 000, you're calling 000. So yeah, it's evolving for sure. There's a story there by the sound of it.
I'm aware. Very quickly, Harry. Last question.
Would there be, given the, would there be a chance down the line, once it becomes more intelligent to know where the fire is and how to spot them pretty quickly, will there be a chance to embed that into the TFS radio system, so it automatically sends the alert straight to them?
100%. Yep. We're working as quickly as we can with the fire management agencies everywhere to make that a thing. We're not the roadblock on that. So last fire season, October to March, just finished, we detected in Tasmania, we detected and monitored just over 500 fires. 90 of those we were first or the only source of that detection. So TFS are going, oh, this is good, but fuck.
Stop creating jobs.
Yeah, there's a little bit like that, right? So, yeah.
All right, I'm aware Rob has to go. Can we thank Rob for that presentation? Fantastic, thank you, Rob. Grab a coffee, people, and you've got an early.
Shares in the company.
I'm entertaining offers.